The rain came down hard that November evening in Portland, turning the streets into rivers of reflected neon light. Michael Torres had just finished his shift at the auto repair shop, his hands still smelling of motor oil despite washing them 3 times. At 54, he was tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. Raising his teenage daughter Emma alone for the past 6 years had taught him that some kinds of tired never really go away. He was taking the long way home, the route that passed by the small park where he used to bring Emma when she was little. These days, at 16, she barely looked up from her phone long enough to say goodnight, but Michael held on to those memories like lifelines. That's when he saw her. At first, it looked like a pile of dark clothes against the brick wall near the old community center, but as his headlights swept across the scene, Michael's heart seized. It was a person, a woman, and she wasn't moving. He pulled over fast, his hands shaking as he grabbed his phone and ran through the rain. As he got closer, he could see the police uniform soaked through and clinging to her small frame. She was young, maybe late 20s, with blonde hair plastered against her pale face. There was blood. Too much blood. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Michael's voice cracked as he knelt beside her, his knees hitting the cold, wet pavement. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and filled with pain. "Help," she whispered, so quietly he almost missed it over the sound of the rain. "Please." Michael's fingers trembled as he dialed 911, then pressed his jacket against the wound in her side. The dispatcher's voice seemed distant as he gave the location. All he could focus on was keeping this young woman alive. "What's your name?" he asked gently, trying to keep her conscious. "Sarah," she managed. "Officer Sarah Mitchell." "I'm Michael. I've got you, Sarah. Help is coming. Just stay with me." Her hand found his, gripping weakly. "My radio. Died. Called for backup, but no one knows where I am." Michael kept talking to her, about anything, everything. He told her about Emma, about the first car he ever fixed, about the apple pie his mother used to make. Anything to keep her eyes open, to keep her fighting. When the ambulance finally arrived, the paramedics had to pry his hand from hers. 3 days passed before Michael worked up the courage to visit Portland General Hospital. He'd called twice to check on her condition, relieved each time to hear she was stable and improving. But something pulled him back, something he couldn't quite name. Sarah was awake when he knocked softly on her hospital room door, her face lit up with recognition. "You came," she said, her voice stronger now. "I wasn't sure if I'd dreamed you." Michael felt his eyes burning. "How could I not? I've been worried sick." They talked for an hour that day. Michael learned that Sarah had been responding to a domestic disturbance call when the suspect had attacked her. She'd managed to fight back and arrest him, but not before sustaining serious injuries. She was alone in the city, having moved from a small town in Idaho 2 years ago to join the force. "No family nearby?" Michael asked. Sarah shook her head. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 22. It's just me." Something in Michael's chest tightened. He knew that kind of alone. The visits became regular. 3 times a week, then 4. Michael would bring homemade soup, books, and stories that made Sarah laugh. Emma came along one evening, curious about the woman her father couldn't stop talking about. The 3 of them played cards until the nurses kicked them out. When Sarah was finally discharged, Michael was there with his truck to drive her home. Her apartment was a sparse 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor of an old building. "Let me help you up," Michael said, offering his arm. At her door, Sarah turned to him. "Michael, I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life that night." "You don't need to thank me for being human," he replied softly. But Sarah shook her head. "It's more than that. You came back. You kept coming back. Do you know how rare that is?" Thanksgiving was 2 weeks later. Sarah had planned to spend it alone with a frozen dinner, but Emma had other ideas. She'd convinced her father to invite Sarah over, and Michael had spent 2 days preparing his mother's old recipes. As they sat around the table, Sarah looked at the faces across from her and felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she laughed, wiping them away. "It's been a long time since I had this. A family." Emma reached across and squeezed her hand. "Well, you have one now." Michael caught Sarah's eye, and something unspoken passed between them, understanding. connection, the beginning of something neither had been looking for but both desperately needed. 6 months later, the entire police force gathered for a special ceremony. Chief Williams stood at the podium, with Michael and Sarah beside him. "This man," he said, his voice carrying across the room, "exemplifies everything we hope to see in our community. His quick action and compassionate care saved one of our finest officers." But as Michael accepted the citizen's commendation, all he could think about was the real gift that Rainy Night had given him. Not recognition or medals, but second chances. At 54, he'd thought his life was set, his path determined. But kindness, he'd learned, has a way of opening doors you never knew existed. Sarah stood in her dress uniform, her hand finding Michael's as the applause died down. Emma was in the front row, beaming with pride. Life, Michael thought, had a funny way of bringing people together exactly when they needed each other most. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your comments mean the world to us, and sharing these stories helps spread kindness to others who might need it today. Thank you for listening.